We'll do our pledge.
Please bow your heads. Lord, we come to you today with hearts of gratitude and thankfulness, Lord. We're thankful for this community that you've provided for us, Lord, and we just pray for this new year that you continue the success that we've had. Lord, we ask for guidance in our decisions, Lord, and we just pray over this board, God. Right now we just ask in your name that you bless the community and that you bless those involved. Lord, we pray right now that you have your hand over us, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Okay, next is 5, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve as presented and a second?
Motion made.
Okay, I have
I'd
a
like
first and a
to
second. All in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? Okay.
If I could.
No, there's no discussion.
Okay.
You each have an approval of the minutes from December 3rd meeting and the executive session. Do I have a motion and do I have a second?
Motion made.
Do I have a second for the December 3rd and executive session meetings?
Second.
Okay, thank you. I have a first and second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you. Public comments. The next item on the agenda is public comments. Public comments are just that, an opportunity for the public to address the commission with any issues or concerns they may have. This is not for the board to comment, nor will the board take any action on the comments. There was a sign-up sheet. I have it here. We will take those comments first, and if anyone else wants to speak, we'll be happy to do those. First, I have Donald Brook. And Donald, if you will, state your name and your address for us. Thank you.
My name is Donald Brook. My address is 3821 Shady Grove Road. Again, thank you for providing a forum for people to come and speak what is on their mind and what they see within the county. I would also like to express great thanks for Commissioner Reynolds and Ben Skipper for their recent visit to look at the problem that I've addressed to this commission several times dealing with motocross activity on an adjacent property. Based on a phone call that I received from Mr. Reynolds this morning, it appears that the lawyers have in the process of drafting stuff for changes to that ordinance. As that moves forward for y'all's review and all that, I hope you make sure that not only does it cover any potential commercial enterprise activity that's going on, but also provides sufficient remedies for residents where there might be recreational use that is in excess of what would be deemed normal. I understand that it's hard to put in some constraints and all that, and as I explained to Commissioner Reynolds, by no means do I want to stop somebody from, grandkids from riding a four-wheeler on a large property or anything like that, but when the noise level gets above certain levels, there has to be a remedy for people to be able to address and get remedy from. So once again, thank you for what y'all done so far, for listening to my comments in the past and the research that y'all have done behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Next, we have Theresa Leslie.
Good evening. My name is Theresa Leslie. I live at 488 Walker Road, Carrollton, Georgia. And I speak tonight on behalf of the Carroll County Humane Society, of which I am the president. Tonight you're going to be asked to vote to update the animal welfare section of the county ordinances, the culmination of an effort that's been going on for over a year. And the Humane Society hopes that you will pass that resolution. But I wanted to be here for public comments to point out that while we support the resolution, we have mixed emotions. We applaud any improvements that bring about positive change for the companion animals of Carroll County. However, we're disappointed that the original proposal has undergone a lot of changes. And for example, much of the early debate centered around bringing animals indoors in extreme hot and cold weather, We had originally proposed even specific temperatures at which that would happen. We dropped that suggestion, but still were wedded to the principle that in extreme weather, outdoor pets should have access to a structure where temperatures would not fall below 40 degrees or rise above 85 degrees. And by that, we meant a structure that could be, they would have access to a barn, a basement, a garage, or, ideally someone's home. But if you didn't want to put them in a home, you could put them in these other structures. That didn't make it into the final resolution, which is a disappointment. But in the greater scheme of things, as long as we have good resolutions, good ordinances, and they are well enforced, we can deal with that. And so we ask you to pass this resolution, and we stand ready to help people comply with the new ordinances. It's important that we get the word out that when people have to comply with these new rules, we are happy to help them. We already provide shelter, dog houses to people who need them at no charge. We will continue to do that, and we will also be able to provide people with ordinance-compliant tethering systems. Animal control and the shelter are aware of our involvement. We will let the public know that we stand ready to assist, because what matters the most going forward is enforcement. You can have the best tools, but if they stay in the toolbox, they don't do any good. And so we are giving animal control these new tools, and we would urge you to make sure that they use them to help the innocent animals. They're having meaningful enforcement. For example, we recently got contacted with people's concerns about a dog that was living chained to a tree in a backyard. That won't be allowed under the new resolution, and we thank you so much for that. But it couldn't reach. There was a dog house of sorts in that backyard, but the dog's chain was not long enough for the dog to get to that shelter. Now, animal control could go out on a concern for welfare check if someone reports it again, which we will do, and say, this is not adequate, you're not allowed to tie a dog to a tree, and if you need help getting a new tethering system, here's the contact information for the Humane Society, they will help you. If we can get similar enforcement of the resolutions for adequate shelter, then we will be happy. For example, originally, the proposal said that a doghouse had to have certain parameters. For example, that a doghouse had to have a floor so that a dog didn't have to lay in the cold or the wet. That's not in the latest version, but still it does say they have to have adequate protection from extremes of weather. So if animal control goes out and that doesn't fit, they can say you don't comply. For example, many times people will be called out to a home and they will say, this animal is outside and that's not, it doesn't have a doghouse. And the people will say, he can get under the porch, that's okay. And animal control would have to say, you're right, he could get under the porch, there's nothing in the ordinances that says that's not adequate, okay, and they wouldn't do anything. But now they can say, no, in our estimation, that is not adequate protection, that is not adequate shelter from the extremes of weather, and so we're going to give you you got to get compliant, call the Humane Society, get a doghouse, or if they don't want to comply, then they can give them a citation and they can take it up to Judge Johnson, and he can decide, is that adequate shelter? So, you have the tools with this new resolution. We'd like to have given them even stronger tools, but as it is, we appreciate the efforts. We appreciate anything that helps the innocent companion animals of Carroll County, and we stand ready to help you guys moving forward. So thank you for listening, and I hope to thank you for your vote.
Thank you, Theresa. Next on the list, Leslie McPherson.
Evening. Leslie McPherson, 103 Chadwick Place, not to be confused with Theresa Leslie. I want to thank you for the time you have spent in looking at the proposed change language for the animal control ordinance. It's been a long 2 years for some of us. I wish I had pictures or video to show you what was brought to my attention this past weekend with some dogs in the Carroll County area of Villa Rica. However, due to the generosity of several Villa Rica citizens, my husband was able to deliver a pallet to them to get one dog house at least somewhat stable, and some straw for insulation for the dogs, they were short-haired pit bulls, basically, in that range. And so the cold conditions do make a big difference. The Humane Society has offered to provide a doghouse for the one whose doghouse is falling apart. It's just a real unique situation, but it's personal, so I won't get into any of that. But there are people that are willing to help, and I'm grateful for that. And the last thing I just want to mention is in the proposed language, I appreciate that it does give the animal control officer some judgment to use as to if it's a husky or if it's a short-haired dog, and a well-trained officer will know how to use their better judgment with that. And so I urge you to vote to pass the current the resolution that's being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Is there anybody else who didn't have the opportunity to sign up that would like to come and speak? I'll ask one more time. Anybody willing to speak? Okay, thank you. We will move on to a special presentation. We have a special resolution concerning the importance of participation in the 2020 U.S. Census. The 2020 census count will begin this month, kicking off a once-a-decade operation in which every household in the United States will have the opportunity to be counted. Responding to the census is very important because getting a complete and accurate count of the population is very critical. Census totals help determine the amount of funding our local community will receive from the federal government for the next decade. Accurate census counts ensure that funding is equitably distributed for health, education, public safety, and infrastructure programs such as road construction and maintenance. Not only is the census important when it comes to funding for local projects, it's important for determining our representation at the state and federal levels. It will also have an impact on our congressional, state, and local districts to ensure that each person's voting power is closely equivalent, meaning the one person, one vote rule. Data from the census is extremely important to our planning and decision-making process concerning new roads, schools, emergency services, and much more. I encourage all our citizens to participate in the census by completing the short survey that will influence our policy making and planning for the next decade. The proclamation is available on the county's website. Next, we move on to the consent agenda. All items under this action have been discussed at the prior public meeting last Thursday and will be presented for consideration as one single item. Only one vote will be taken, and I'll announce each item on the consent agenda. So 9.1 is to advertise a budget amendment in the amount of $15,093 to replace the HVAC system on the county admin building. 9.2, setting qualifying fees for county offices in the 2020 elections. 9.3, reappointment of Deborah Word and Tyler Shaddix to the Employee Sick Leave Council. 9.4, reappointment of Trey Wiley, Bobby Holcomb, and Amanda Greenwood Smith to the Carroll County Water Authority. 9.5, reappointment of James Gamble to the Carroll County Board of Elections and Registration. 9.6, appointment of Dwayne Hicks to the Joint Development Authority. 9.7, appointment of Terry Agnew to the Three Rivers Regional Commission Board. 9.8, appointment of Donna Armstrong Lackley to the Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion made.
Second.
Okay, great. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. Now we're going to move into the financial session. Let me get there. Alicia presented the November financial recap at the work session this last Thursday. Does anyone have any further questions for her?
Madam Chair, I had a couple of questions that I
Okay.
just wanted Ms. Cersei to be. I had sent some questions, and she was able to get back with all of us later this afternoon with some things. Under revenues, charges for services, I know the current year budget is down about $200,000 from prior year to date, but the year to date is up roughly the same amount as prior year to date.
We based that reduction in what the totals were at the end of the year last year, and we had some shared expenses with E911, and with the old rate structure that they were under, their cash was not allowing them to meet those designated amounts, so we reduced that budget line item. And so compared to last year, where we weren't making those payments for some time, we have that amount of money that differs because we ended up making that money up at the end of the year in June.
Okay, thank you. And the intergovernmental current year to budget is down from prior year, but year-to-date numbers were escalated. Our grants are up this year due to a final payment of a federal disaster grant for prior year floods of about $59,000. That wasn't included in our budget. We typically don't know when those grants will settle out, and so that one settled out this year and we received that money. So that helped us to get our numbers up as far as the grant money is concerned. We also have some accounting changes for paving for other entities. Like if we pay for one of the municipalities, we now have to bring that money back into the general fund and then do an intergovernmental transfer back. We also have the solicitor salary that we received from the city of Carrollton, that they're helping the county provide additional help in the solicitor's office, and that wasn't budgeted. Okay. And then under taxes, I know that cost, penalties, and interest, the prior year budget, we're down about $230,000, but year to date, or what we had budgeted, and then year to date is actually up $27,000.
Yeah, the penalties and interest to me are fairly hard to forecast. Last year's collections were very good as far as our property taxes were concerned. We collected about 99% of our property taxes. So I did not anticipate that we would have as much in penalties and interest this year. And the penalties and interest have continued to come in. So I think even in good economic times, we can expect to see some penalties and interest at levels probably pretty comparable to the prior year.
Yes, ma'am. I know that's something you and I had kind of talked about. It's maybe a misnomer. It's hard to track. Logic would think with a better economy, but I think we're seeing as we prepare for a future budget that some people are just going to pay late. It doesn't matter.
That's right.
Okay. And just, Madam Chairman, just in reference to the finances, I think the only additional comment I'd like to make is the budget amendments that we're going to be looking at. I'm in favor of those budget amendments and we'll be voting for them today. I just want us to be cognizant of the fact, before I came into office, one thing that I heard from different department heads or different agencies is we obviously have a tough job. We have department heads that report directly to you and this board, and then we're responsible to the best of our ability to fund other agencies within Carroll County that may be that do not directly report to this board or to the chairman. So I just want to make sure that while everything's coming before us is something that I think is legit, is it a fair process that we're considering some to come to us at a certain time in the year when we weren't able to do things in the beginning of the budget process, but are we opening that up to other departments as well to at least consider what they had asked us for in the prior year? So that's just something I think as a board I hope that we can try to look at as we move forward. And I know we're going to have things come to us in the middle of the year, and that's fine. There's also some other things we're looking at the county admin building. I know we're not there yet as far as what we're looking to do, but there's just a lot of things that are sitting out there that I just want to make sure as a board we're continuing to think about as we spend money, things that we may have to spend on the back end. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Welcome. Anybody else have questions?
Well, I have one for Ms. Theresa, and I guess mine's a bottom line question. If my arithmetic is correct, we're looking at about $113,000 here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're not going to be in any strain with that $113,000 being added to the budget?
No, we have additional revenues above our budget amount that will cover those.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing and hearing no further questions, We're going to move into 10.1, the budget amendment for fire rescue in the amount of $17,540.79 for funding of fire training. As I said on Thursday, we are ahead, and yes, Clint, you're very valid in your points about we don't want to every month be sitting here discussing new dollar amounts. This is the first year we've ever really had some excess funds, and these three particular items are more of timely manner than some others might be. So at this point, are there any questions for Tim concerning the training? If not, I will entertain a motion and a second, please.
Motion made.
Second.
Okay, I have first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that was easy. All right, 10.2, budget amendment for elections in the amount of $46,200, $28,050 to cover additional election expenses. I see Greg, at my request, brought the equipment, so you can see that's exactly how it will be sitting for our constituents if we don't purchase some equipment that he needs. So do you have any other questions for Greg, or Greg, do you have any other comments you'd like to make?
Just to clarify, Mr. Rigsby said that he felt confident this amount would at least get you through the end of the fiscal year, and then if we had other issues to deal with later, hopefully that would be in a new budget cycle, correct?
Yes, this should cover all the expenses for the additional cost of paper and ballots and additional poll workers. And like I said, the additional amounts for the equipment that we need are covered by 50% for some general merchandise, for security and that type thing, 75 cents on the dollar. So that part of it is a really good deal for the county. So thank you. That's covered by the HAVA grant, the Help America Vote grant.
Okay, any further questions? All right, at this point, all those in favor? Any opposed?
You make a motion?
Oh, I thought we had a motion. I'm sorry. Did I
No.
miss that?
Motion made.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Do we have a motion? Sorry.
Motion made.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. Okay, discussion we just had. I got a little backwards there. All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Commissioners. All right, 10.3 is the budget amendment for the Public Defender's Office in the amount of $6,500 to cover the increased telephone supply expenses. Mary Ellen is here. If y'all have any questions for her.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. Okay, next. We'll move into the business section. Is 11.1, Vice Chairman election. The election of the 2020 Vice Chairman of the Carroll County Board of Commissioners. Do I have a...
I'll make a motion to elect George Chambers.
Okay, do I have a second? I'll second it. Okay, you can second it. All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any of those opposed? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, now we'll move into 11.2, the Animal Control Ordinance, and we have Avery Jackson to go over that for us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and District Commissioners. We have before you for your consideration a proposal to amend the Animal Control Ordinance. We discussed a lot of those changes at the work session, but basically they revolve around the definition of adequate shelter, the proper tethering procedures, and some amendments concerning the community cat program. Are there any questions about those changes?
Mr. Jackson, I just want to make a couple of comments. I know you had spent a lot of time before I ever even got on the board, working with a lot of municipalities, and as Theresa Leslie was pointing out, I think some of the cumbersomeness, if you will, of this is that we want to have uniformity because every municipality within Carroll County uses our animal control, so we're hoping that they adopt the similar ordinance. And so there's had to be concessions because we've had people in a rural part of our community, such as in Commissioner Chambers' area, and then some in the city that may have different climates in Villa Rica or Carrollton. When I say climates, I mean as far as their environment, if you will. So I think there's been a lot of hype about this over the past year or two. People adamantly opposed, some adamantly in favor. And I think all I would ask constituents to do is really to look at the language in this. It's not that far off from what it was before. I think there's some improvements there, but you're not going to have to bring your animals in. There's not a lot of things that are really going to put undue stress, if you will, on pet owners. As long as they're doing something within reason to take care of their animals, they're going to be fine. So I just don't want there to be hype about something that's not in this. And if you look at some of our surrounding communities, such as Haralson County, they actually, I would consider them more rural than us, and they have a more stringent ordinance than we're proposing here. So here again, I'm not taking away credit from what it does. I think it's an improvement and does help protect some of the animals. But in the same note, it's not some of the things that I have heard with the misnomers floating in the air that this is just so strict. I just don't think that is what's at hand. So I commend you for the effort. I know you've had a lot of work that you had to do in trying to work with all the municipalities and with our board as well. So thank you.
I've got a question for you, Avery.
Okay.
So in the adequate shelter, it mentions the word pet several times, and then later on it defines the word pet as any animal kept for pleasure, excluding livestock. What I'm wondering about in my area, and I'm sure, like Clint mentioned, in George's area as well as Steve's probably, a lot of farmers have both herding dogs and hunting dogs. So I'm wondering about those two classifications of animals. Would they be included as pet, as an animal kept for pleasure, the herding dogs and the hunting dogs?
I think certainly the herding dogs would be agriculturally related and would not be specifically kept just for pleasure. It's kept in relation to your farm and your livelihood. Your hunting dogs, I mean, if that's a means of how you get food and stuff, then also that would not be strictly for pleasure. That's, again, how you going out and hunting for food and stuff. So I don't think if the animals are kept for those other purposes, then that's not strictly for pleasure.
Okay.
Okay, at this time I'll entertain a motion and a second.
Motion made.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Okay, seeing and hearing no discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Our one final item this evening is a proposal to add additional days to the list of the official county holidays. I'm proposing that we amend our civil service policies and procedures so as to add 4 hours on Wednesday before Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve as an official county holiday. I feel like our employees are our most valuable assets, and allowing them to have additional times with their families around the holidays is very important. This additional time will also make our employee benefit package more comparable to the municipalities around us, the county and city schools, as well as our surrounding counties. This would also make it very fair to any of those in public safety or public works that have to work those days. They would be compensated for them. So 11.3 is a consideration of resolution to amend the county civil service policies and procedures amendment. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, and also I want to let everybody know that Ann Lee, our human resource, is sponsoring this with me, so if you have any questions, she'd be happy to answer them. And I believe, Ann, last week we did have a question about how much it was going to cost starting July 1st budget, and you had sent out an email, but...
You recalculated it into an additional $65,000, and if all of our vacancies are filled, it would be an additional additional 5. So it would be a total of 70 if all the vacancies are full.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any questions for Ann?
Madam Chairman, are we starting, so we're starting this July, we're approving it now, but starting at July 1?
Yes, it
Okay.
starts the January 1st calendar year, and the reason we brought it up now is that employees do need time to plan their holidays and their vacation time, but the financial part of it would start with the July 1st, 2020-21 budget.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. We had discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you very much. At this time, before we adjourn, I want to remind you guys, on Thursday, we are hosting the Carroll County Junior Chamber, and those of you that are still able to attend lunch, we're going to set up the students with you, with your district. So if anything changes in your plans, please let Sissy or Susan know. So at this point, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Oh, wait, I think I need a motion. Tommy?
Motion made.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of joining the meeting, say aye or raise your hand. Okay. There we go. That's